I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Baroness Claire Fox for the first time on the nighttime show here in prime-time Independent Republic territory. Claire, very good evening to you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Mike. Good to be with you.
Are you, like everybody else, slightly in shock about all of this? The return of my Lord Dave, as we now have to call him.
I mean, he's going to be one of my peers, Mike, you know, sitting opposite me. How excited am I?
Well, I mean, maybe you can quiz him on his foreign policy, because nobody else can.
Well, exactly. I mean, it is atrocious that the only way he can be held to account is in the House of Lords. So, you know, that's completely anti-democratic before we start. But listen, I think that both the sacking of Suella Braverman and particularly the return of David Cameron really is a double slap across the face for the Red Wall. For me, it's that confirmation, and we might have been able to suspect it when we saw Jeremy Hunt put in as Chancellor, that this is a real attempt by the government to completely put a stop to that political realignment of 2019 and the hopes and aspirations of people that maybe the Conservative Party was the vehicle that could be used to shake up British politics. But they, you know, what they're doing, I mean, they're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle just by putting in David Cameron. They might keep the blue wall a bit happy, possibly, but they're basically betraying the aspirations of what happened in 2016 very badly today.
They really are. And people always said, didn't they, that the Ramonas will never stop. They will eventually get control of the machine again. I mean, is this that moment, do you think?
Well, I think that it really is the return of the technocrats, isn't it? I mean, what do these people stand for? What do they believe in? You know, this is kind of the worst. Somebody described it on social media as, you know, a vanilla government, and that's exactly what it is. You don't know what they stand for. Suella Braverman might not be to everyone's taste, but at least she had a bit of passion about her. We're in the middle of very dark times. You've been discussing it brilliantly, interestingly, with people like Peter Hitchens and so on. And what you feel that you want are people who really have a handle on the situation, are going to stand firm, are going to be brave and courageous and take on some of the difficult issues around, for example, the rise of, you know, actual proper anti-Semitism in the most vile form that we could imagine, etc., etc. All of this is going on. And by the way, I would like to correct some of your people who phoned in, because when I say if only, this is not just a problem of radical Islam, you know, Islamists. It's also combined with that worst toxic mix of identity politics, which, for example, has, you know, Jews at the top of some white privilege pyramid, treats Palestinians as though they're a universal victim. All of that decolonization stuff is this, you know, that Israel is described as a colonizer state. It's that mix which has given a green light to allow anti-Semitism onto the streets, and everybody just looks the other way. I mean, it's really frightening times.
It is.
What do? They bring in a failed prime minister. He failed to get a deal with the EU. Remember, he went over begging them all to give us a better deal.
Right.
He then came back rather pompously, called the referendum. They were so sure they were going to win, and he lost.
Yeah. And
then what did he do? He ran away. You know, he called the referendum. He lost the referendum, but he could have stayed as prime minister. But he basically threw his toys out the pram and walked away. And now we're meant to greet him as a hero. You are kidding me.
I know. And I was interesting what you said there about the identity politics, because I was reading a piece of the weekend by Andrew Sullivan in the States. He was talking about how words have now been sort of taken out of context and used against everybody. Genocide is now a word which is used, thrown around constantly against Israel, that Israel's committing genocide against the Palestinian population. As some people pointed out, the one thing that the Palestinian population has done over the past 20 to 30 years is grown exponentially. So there's actually a lot more of them than there used to be, and the number of Jewish people in Israel is about the same. So, you know, there's all sorts of ridiculousness going on. But let me ask you about free speech, Claire, because I know it's one of your top subjects. In terms of what we do about these marches, what do we do? Because I can't see them stopping at this point. Why would they? We know some of the people who are behind organising them are very, very anti-Israeli. How do we stop these marches from being what they currently are, which is pretty much an affront to decent people?
Well, I think that we've got to acknowledge that if you can't see something, it doesn't mean it's there. So I remember when the NUS and student unions banned Hizb ut-Tahrir from being on campus, right? That was after 7/7.
Yeah.
So they didn't organise a Hizb ut-Tahrir, and you might think, oh, that means there's no Hizb ut-Tahrir on campus. But pushing people underground doesn't make the idea go away. You know, you can't make an idea illegal like that. So the danger is that we push things away from the public sphere so that they fester. And what we're all shocked about is just how bad this anti-Semitism is. Although actually I've been, and you know, some of us have been banging on about the problem of anti-Semitism, particularly on the left, for some time. Not just in the kind of Corbynista sense, but just this way that Israel's been treated as an exceptional state. But anyway, the point is, once you have censorship, all that you do is that you remove from your own site, it might make you feel better, the problem you've got. So I thought that Peter Hitchens explained well that we need to hear these people. We need to see them. Yeah. We need to be able to actually see them so that they can be identified for the genuine hate mongers that they are. And then we've got to win the hearts and minds of the, you know, tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of young people who are kind of rather gormlessly going along with it because they sort of say, oh, I like peace or whatever, right? They don't, they're very unfamiliar with the nuance or the detail of the history of the Middle East, let alone anti-Semitism, and the problems that we confront in this, or that we need more speech to do that, not less. I do not want to give the state the right to decide that certain words and speech is hate and they should be banned. Because guess what? Guess who they'll be shutting up? People like us.
I know.
And I also wanted to say, you know, sorry, just to interrupt, just on the reshuffle, by the way, I did rather like, it does relate, I did rather like the fact that rather half-heartedly at the end of the day, they made Esther McVey MP, who I'm rather fond of, the Minister for Common Sense.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh dear.
Yeah, but I'm very sorry. They didn't consult me.
Mike's ideas.
They didn't consult me before they stole that one, so I'm going to have words, I'm afraid.
But the reason I'm using that as an example is because I know that, you know, people will say that some of the things that she's done in terms of broadcasting would be accused of being hate speech. Things on this show accused of hate speech. You call them common sense, other people call them hate speech. And I think it's very dangerous to call on any government to ban speech, even if it's the most deplorable, disgusting, vile, bigoted speech. I don't want to do that.
No, I appreciate that. Good to see you. Great to see you, in fact, Baroness Claire Fox. She may be the woman that holds back the resistance and is able to actually get some sense out of David Cameron, Lord Dave, as he's now known.